Good afternoon, everyone. So this workshop we purposely designed for uh, large industry and oil and gas refinery sector, and we will capture many part of carbon market in this workshop. And there are more industry experts and industry leaders are also there to take it further in the workshop and give more insight, knowledge, and practical knowledge and learning that how industry can lead in this decarbonization journey and what are the opportunity we have. I'll just share the presentation quickly. I will just give the overview about the carbon market. I think a lot of part I have covered in the last session. So, I'll just skip the slide about CMAI because we have the same set of people. So we are industry body working dedicatedly for policy level development, large stakeholders there in the carbon market, and we have to develop project together, either from the industry side, policymaker, think tank, and all. And carbon market is a global opportunity, not only India opportunity. So India opportunity is that it will help to meet the net zero goal and DC target. And the global opportunity is that we also can generate large FDI to the country in the coming days, because India needs, I think, as per the figure, $5 trillion by 2030 to we get a net zero transition journey. And these are the activities we are doing. So capacity building is the major area. So recently we also collaborated with one of the leading IM for capacity building program and course, which we are going to conduct from January onwards. And it's a complete certification program, although today's course is also a certification program from CMAI. So some course we are designing conceptualized as per the industry needs and requirement. And I think after the workshop, you can share the feedback that what kind of course and learning you are looking forward from CMAI. That will really helpful for us. And accordingly, we can organize those kind of activities for you. And those activities we can organize in person also, virtual also. And we have a large member team. We can also reach to your organization. And some program can be conceptualized for your organization requirement. And recently, we have done a program with Indian Oil also. And where 9 refinery people, more than 9 refineries people has came, and 60 people we have done a workshop for decarbonization of refineries. So these are a little background. So when the CMAI comes, government has large expectation in terms of policy development. So we closely work with all the key ministries, stakeholders in multiple programs, and we are actually the industry voice and raise the industry voice so that policy level implementation, industry can play very cooperative roles and collaborative role in this transition. So I'm very happy to share that Government of India has met a technical committee member for Green Credit program. And we are one of the technical committee members, in total 15 technical committee members. And Green Credit has to play a very important role for decarbonization of India. And CMAI is dedicatedly working with the government for industry opinion and feedback and opinion so that industry collaborations can really help this program to make it next level. So this is really interesting that as the last session, when the US Embassy came and participated in this CCUS program. So CMAI is closely working with multiple countries and collaborations is a major goal, and we are aiming for that. Because India has a great opportunity for those countries as well in terms of technology transfer. And at the same time, as per the carbon Paris Agreement, we can also transfer carbon credit as per ITMO. So that collaborations are expecting in the coming years. And we are going to sign MOU with Japan in the stage 1, then Korea, Singapore. And recently we came to know that more than 10 countries has requested India to sign Article 6.2 MOU. And that is going to give a huge opportunity. And 14 technology areas I will just share with you in the next slide. We do the workshop, I have already shared in the last presentation, we have done for Indian Oil. And now every ministry is aiming to decarbonize their sectors, like MNRE recently done a national carbon market workshop, and they are particularly targeting about renewable energy and how renewable energy can play India to achieve net zero, and also green hydrogen. So we are happy to organize workshop for each and every sectors, because every sectors where greenhouse gas mitigation is happening and carbon credit opportunities are there, CMAI can help and guide those companies and corporates. So recently we also got a chance to meet Prime Minister Office, and we have given the feedback about Article 6.2, and government has accepted our feedback, and clean cooking, clean energy activity has been added in Article 6.2 technology list. And I'm sure that in the coming years, that is going to create a big impact in the rural community level. And not only carbon credit generation will be there, and large funding will come, and also giving various co-benefits to community and society at large. And apart from that, we are closely working with Bureau of Energy and Indian Oil and Ministry of Power. So they have done workshop and all carbon market. COP, we are taking delegation, we have discussed. So these are large industry members have joined us, and we help them to take the feedback in terms of policy and capacity building, and also help them to identify what are the carbon projects possibilities they have. Unfortunately, they do many activities, but they are not able to get the carbon credit. And CMI can help to do end-to-end management of carbon credit development also for those corporates and enterprise. So regarding this certification course is regarding giving more insights about navigating carbon market and achieving net zero. And what are the important strategies which industry should look forward. And I think after the course, we'll also have a small test, and where we will give you some questionnaire and you have to fill the answer. And after that, we also give the certification for the course. So these are the modules we're going to cover. Module 1 will be about climate change, its impact and development of policies. Module 2, which will talk about understanding types of industry emission, and that is very important regarding scope 1, 2, and 3. So I find that industry is facing difficulties to track scope 3 emissions. So we have experts here who will guide that how scope 3 emissions you should track, because scope 3 emission is around, sometimes more than 80% emissions are coming from scope 3, and for which we have to be ready because of global compliance are ahead. And Module 3 will talk about carbon offset project development and climate finance generation opportunity. So that is really interesting. So we'll also share some of the projects is going around the world and getting big funding, and how international players are looking forward India as a destination for collaboration. And Module 4 about pathway and strategies for refineries to achieve net zero. So that is really interesting, and most of the refineries should start to think about that and follow up all these models. And all this course we have experts like Mr. Arun Victor is already working with more than 100 companies so far and giving insights and solutions. And Mr. Samrat Sen Gupta is a carbon market expert, and he is not only giving insights for the industry, but also helping in terms of policy development to the not only India government, but also many countries. And again, Module 4 will discuss about from Arun, and he will definitely help to understand what is carbon neutrality and what is net zero, what are the difference. So all those deep basic knowledge we'll be able to provide you in this session. I'm sure that it will add value to your professional career and taking decisions inside the organization. So I've already briefed myself that my background is more than 20 years I'm in these sectors, and I started a journey from the policy level development from the government side. I was in media earlier, so I also won the National Media Award, and I'm fortunate that President of India has felicitated me, and Vice President of India has also felicitated me for various activity I've done in the community level. And I'm also part of Swachh Bharat campaign when India became the ODF free, and that program was organized in Sabarmati Belt in Gujarat. And now my main focus is that how climate goal India and world can meet, and how climate change as a crisis, we all can join hand together and able to make this as a vision to achieve net zero. So I will also communicate about the eminent speaker, Mr. Arun Victor, and he is already associated with the CMAI and helping industry to give more insights regarding the market. And right now, he is an assistant vice president from the leading carbon credit company called EKI Energy. And he has a deep knowledge about end-to-end strategic development and also helping companies to secure their future business. And he is also, prior to this, he was in CII and also helped CII to develop sustainability practices and sustainability projects. And eminent speaker is Mr. Samrat Sen Gupta, and he's also involved in multiple policy level development in India and the world. And right now he's also working in EKI, and he is a strategic person, and really help India to get renewable energy credits from solar, wind, hydro, and uh, and the national and international level civil society organizations see as a part of that. And Samrat will give more insights about what is happening in the world and how this market, because it's a prior knowledge, past knowledge is going to help us and shape the market ahead. Now, I'll just quickly, so few slides, I will start the momentum of the course. So we all know about the climate change. So there are large concerns on climate change, and starting from CO2 level and increasing temperature, sea level increasing is the biggest challenge for a lot of countries, which we discuss in every COP. So last COP, some country blames to other country because of GHG emissions, and they blame that because of you, we are going to sink in coming years. So that kind of global war and global negotiation, or you can say that the world is moving towards different directions. So climate is going to be the biggest threat in coming days. And it is also impacting largely agriculture and also impacting the heat waves we have seen in Delhi. So 52 degree we have crossed. So first time that was a major climate change we have seen in Delhi. And also other climate issues like cyclone and other concerns are there. So there's a very large concern of climate change. It's not only temperature. It is completely disturbing the entire ecosystem of the planet. So, but this is the reality also. So how the sea level is increasing. So these figures are everywhere. We can see in the books and research report. And how suddenly the carbon dioxide level has increased drastically. So are we going to the right way for industrializations, or we have to think about sustainable development and goal now? So that is a discussions and dialogue which every organization is doing it. And also there's a big threat in the carbon industry that entire world is moving towards different directions. So we have to change our thinking and thought. We have to be more sustainable. And otherwise it is might impact our business at large. And what will be the impact in business, we can't predict right now. So that is a big threat. So this slide is very much clear that are we waiting for 250 sea level, 1 to 4 feet increase, and how many islands and how many cities is going to sink. So that threat we have. And we have discussed about the greenhouse gas and last presentation. So greenhouse gas, these are the 7 gases are there, the major challenge for environment. They are a major concern for climate change. And now these gases are more and more in the nature. That's why the temperature is rising. But in this greenhouse gas, some gases are very dangerous, and so CO2, we are part of life, CO2 is everywhere. But if you have 1 ton of methane as a greenhouse gas, it is equivalent to 28 ton of CO2. So that dangerous methane is 28 times dangerous than CO2. And if you have 1 ton of nitrous oxide, that is 265 times of CO2. While other 4 gases are highly industrial gas, they're much, much dangerous. So that's why these gases are, last 4 gases are banned also in most of the countries and industries. So some decisions are already taken earlier, but we should understand that how these gases are really big concern and which gases are more dangerous than other gas. So after knowing all this climate change and activity happening around the world has agreed to work together in this direction. And in 1970, you can see that US EPA has been formed. Then 1972, UN Conference on Humans and Environment has been done. 1979, World Climate Conference has been done. And after that, International Conference on Assessment of the Rise of the Greenhouse Gas has been done. Then we have formed the UNFCCC, then Kyoto Protocol, then Paris Agreement. So this is not a beginning here right now. We have already decided to think about that, and the entire world has agreed to work together in this direction. But how it is going to happen? So we have to see those activities, and how carbon market can play a very important role for making it happen. So this is the greenhouse gas emissions happening around the world. So we have a largely greenhouse gases emitting because we have a large energy demand, and this is growing every year. Then agriculture, forestry, land management, waste management, and industry. So greenhouse gas is emitting everywhere. It's a part of life for all activities. Now we have to find out where the greenhouse gas is emitting at large and how we can stop it. So that is a challenge, and how we can migrate towards a renewable energy and green source of energy in coming days. We have discussed about 1.5 degree threshold the entire world has decided. Else, if it will be 2 degrees centigrade and more than that, we have to pay big risk in coming ahead for us. Then this slide is important. I have discussed in the last presentation as well. So there's a lot of development happen in the carbon market to measure those emissions and to create measure those emissions and how every country can get the target in this geographical area, and how industry can also meet those target and compliance, and how carbon market can help to get additional fund in terms of climate funding and carbon funding. So this activity has started aggressively from 1992 from the carbon market point of view, where UNFCCC has been formed. Then Kyoto Protocol has been formed in Japan. This meeting has been done. And after Kyoto Protocol agreement, there's a Paris Agreement has been done by adding more flavor to the carbon market, where all the developing country and developed country participated in the Paris Agreement, and most of them have decided net zero goal as per their requirement. India has 2070 net zero, China 2060, European Union 2050, while the other small nations has decided net zero goal much earlier, like Bhutan, Iceland and all. So they are the real example to be a net zero goal country. Apart from that, compliance market, so compliance market helps to meet the net zero NDC target for different countries and also gradually meet to net zero goal. So that is governed by the government of that country or zone. Like EU ETS has a compliance market for European Union, and New Zealand ETS is compliance market for New Zealand, California is for US and China, Korea. So all those compliance market is helping those countries to meet the emission reduction target. Gradually, there are voluntary carbon market also came in picture, and voluntary carbon market are the independent standards. And there are two kinds of voluntary carbon market. One is that international voluntary carbon market, and second is domestic voluntary carbon market. But the voluntary carbon market aims to meet the net zero goal to industries much faster than what NDC target we have decided, and also help industries to meet the global compliance much ahead than what government is thinking about NDC target. So Kyoto Protocol is 1997 has been done, where carbon market CDM and carbon offset has been discussed and agreed on this. Then Paris Agreement in 2015, we have all the world has set up an ambitious target. And our aim was to keep the rise in mean global temperature to well below 2 degree ever pre-industrial era. So that was the aim, and every country has signed. So we are a party of that. India is also a party of that Paris Agreement. So this really talk about the challenges in the Paris Agreement. Why Paris Agreement? We can go to Paris Agreement to Kyoto Protocol to Paris Agreement, because the challenges in the Kyoto Protocol was lack of inclusivity, and developing countries were not subject to emission reduction target, and that was implemented issue. Major issue was that withdrawal from the key nations like USA was not part of Kyoto Protocol. So we are not able to create a global consensus in the Kyoto Protocol era. Then we have converted to, entire world has signed the Paris Agreement. And in the Paris Agreement, every developing country target has been also been announced and decided. And Article 6 has been framed in the Paris Agreement, where the carbon market discussion has come after Paris Agreement primarily. And the three kind of policy development has been done, where Article 6.2 and 6.4 is very important. Article 6.2, it has also discussed that carbon credit can be transferred internationally. It's beyond the geographical location, zones and all. And Article 6.4 talks about it's a UNFCCC driven market. Earlier, Article 6.4 was named as Clean Development Mechanism. So after, now 6.4 is coming with more and more methodology, rules, regulations, and amendment. And all these two articles, 6.2 and 6.4, is going to be finalized, expected to going to be finalized in COP29, Azerbaijan, which is going to happen in Baku next month. So quickly, what is carbon credit? If you reduce 1 ton of carbon dioxide, metric ton of carbon dioxide emissions from the nature, it will 1 credit. And those credit is tradable. So we can trade those credit and get the carbon credit funding. And carbon offsetting is, a carbon offset is a reduction or removal of emission of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases made in order to compensate for emission made elsewhere. So this is the offsetting example, and I will come with the projects also. What kind of projects can become in the removal and reduction. This entire detail, Samrat will share the presentation. He will give entire detail the processes of generating carbon credit. So that end-to-end process, we are happy to guide you, assist you in this entire value chain. And I think CMAI can take lead role in this direction. And for every steps, like starting from project design document, and next step is project listing, then project registry, then audit is a part of that in between, then issuance of the credit, then trading of the credit. So entire cycle is there, and we are able to guide you in each and every steps. If you have questions, you can ask the speaker in the next session. So I'll quickly tell about 4 kind of carbon markets. More detail will be shared by Samrat. So one is that domestic carbon market to meet the NDC goal. And voluntary carbon market is already existing in the world. India, we have only voluntary carbon market right now, because the compliance market is going to start 2026. And another market is 6.2 and 6.4, which is going to start in coming year, expected to start, while Government of India is already announced certain technology areas where we wish to collaborate other countries in this regard. Yeah. So what is the meaning of Article 6 credit and why it is required? So Article 6 credit will definitely help to give the national budget revenue, investment, will fetch investment to the country, then support in the countries in making the NDC goal. Like suppose Japan and India is collaborating, and Japan is doing technology investment to India, and India is transferring credit to Japan. So those credit will help Japan to meet the NDC goal, and India will get the high-end technology and also various co-benefits which happen to the country. And finally, the leverage technology. So certain technology which we don't have, we are able to get those technology by Article 6.2 collaboration. So there are 2 kind of carbon projects, removal projects and reduction projects. So removal projects is compared to reduction and avoidance projects are better price in the market. So some companies are also developing carbon projects to make a business model. Like some of the projects which will be our next speaker will talk about, like clean cooking projects is one of the most profitable projects in this carbon market, because companies are doing this project to make the revenue double or triple in 5 years' time, only from the carbon funding. So some case study, we have a biochar projects where companies are doing it to make the double money in the 5 years' time. So only from the carbon funding. And where like community is also going to get advantage. They are getting device free of cost and all those activities. And various 8 to 9 SDG goals these projects are meeting. So this is also a new business model in the market. Some companies have developed a forest in Australia, and they are selling credit to the companies who is the emitters. So this is a new business opportunity for various people who want to enter in this market and develop projects for carbon credit generation. And these companies are offsetting the emissions for other companies. So I think we have already discussed about the Panchamitra and also I will skip the slide. More detail will be given by the next speaker. And these are the sectors where large emissions are happening in India, primarily electricity productions, then road transportations, and non-specific industries. So government has already plotted where the large emissions are happening, and accordingly government is fixing target for those tech sectors for emission reduction, so that we can meet our Panchamitra and net zero goal plan. So there is a study done by Bureau of Energy where they have decided the roadmap to achieve 45% emission intensity reduction and CO2 saving of 1 billion ton by 2030. And how it is going to happen, they have already created some activities where power generations, they are trying to reduce the emission by 731 metric ton CO2. And energy efficiency, they are trying to reduce the emission by 740 metric ton by CO2 by 2030. So accordingly, they will able to meet 45% emission intensity target of Government of India. So those government is really planning for all those activity by implementing a lot of policies coming to the market, and that lead to be the emission reduction and achieving NDC target. Government has also done the amendment for India Energy Bill, which is Act 2022, where it has been mentioned that carbon market, framework of carbon market has to play a very important role in coming days. And We also have a large earlier experience in the sector, as we already had a PAT scheme earlier, and renewable energy certification scheme we have. And also we were leader in the clean development mechanism earlier. So all those learnings, we are able to make an Indian carbon market. And Indian carbon market will definitely going to help India's NDC and mitigation outcome. Investment will fetch up investment also to industry. And also follow the Article 6 rule, which is decided, as we are signing party of Paris Agreement, Article 6. So in LUT sales, we have 5 type of markets in India. And 4 type of carbon market, and 1 is that green credit program, which is not same as carbon credit, but it is really focusing on environmental attributes and other credits. So 1 is that national carbon market we have discussed, which really focusing on NDC goal, same as EU ETS market. Second, we have Article 6.2, which really talks about bilateral collaboration between 2 countries. Third is that Article 6.4, which is same as CDM, and it really focus on UNFCCC market, we can say this. And next is that international voluntary carbon market, where India has, the voluntary carbon market last year was $2 billion market, and India has 30% approx share, so $0.65 billion market was in India, but this market is expected to grow $250 billion by 2050 and other figures. So there's a large growth expected in coming years, because every company has to make the net zero goal target, and they need a voluntary credit to achieve net zero goal in coming years. While Green Credit Program is launched by Government of India, it is different than carbon market, but government has announced that green credit can also be used as a carbon credit and meet the ESG score of the company. This is a simple calculation that in the current PAT approach, we really focus on total energy input of the plant and boundaries, while in the carbon market, which is going to start by 2026, we will focus about GHG emission is the primary objective. So that little difference is there when the market is going to change from PAT to carbon market and going to merge by 2026. So this slide, I'd like to just cover that. Suppose we have decided that baseline is 2.5 ton emission reduction by a company, but our target is suppose 2.2 ton CO2 emission reduction per ton of activity. Then suppose we are doing better, achieving better, like 2.2 ton is a target, but we are achieving 2 ton. We are doing 2 ton emission. So rest we can sell it to companies who's not able to meet the target. So that is a way where if you have exceeding the target, we can sell this credit to the companies who are doing the shortfall of the target. So that is a simple calculation. More detail will be given by our colleague. So these are the Green Credit Program sectors. So there are 8 sectors are coming in the Green Credit Program. One is that tree plantation. Second is water-based green credit. Third is that sustainable agriculture-based green credit. Then waste management-based green credit. Air pollution reduction-based green credit. Mangrove plantation is another area. Ecomark leveling based on green credit. And government has also launched a Ecomark. Recently a notification has come out for Ecomark also. I suggest to read those notifications also. And next is that sustainable building and infrastructure-based green credit. So this is also an environmental incentive program, and government is making this market parallelly. And this market is more than greenhouse gas mitigation, and various co-benefits and environmental attributes are coming in this market. So way forward for net zero is very simple, that we have to measure what kind of emissions we are doing. More detail will be given by Arun. And then we have to set a baseline for each and every companies. And then GHG carbon removal projects we have to implement, whatever emissions are left. Then we have to achieve the net zero goal. So CMAI can really help you to get the sustainable project identification of your organization. Optimizing CSR spend is also an area, because government has also announced that CSR funding can also be utilized for carbon credit or green credit program. And establish innovation carbon credit offset projects also. If somebody is interested to develop offset project, we can provide you. And we can also help you to accelerate decarbonization process because technology has to play a very important role. So large number of Indian startups and global technology can be used by the corporates and enterprise so that they can actually achieve the net zero goal target much faster. And digitization is very important in this market because measuring all kind of emissions and measuring where to do certain corrections, because some companies have large, like Indian Oil has many petroleum pumps and they're not able to measure the emissions at what activity, which plant and refinery is happening. So we have to reduce those emissions. So those things can easily be measured by digitizations. Like railway has 18 to 19 PSUs and they have to achieve net zero by 2030. So they need a digital tool to measure each and every activity emissions and corrections are required. So that tool and software we have already developed and our members are also providing those tools to IGL and other part of company. And we are already taking delegation and somebody interested to COP. So that is a forum where we can actually speak about what your organization and what country stand for and what are the advantages India has. And regarding MSME, we are ready to train and skilled MSME so that they can actually know what are the activities they should do so that they can meet the global compliance going to ahead and entire value chain, green value chain or decarbonization process. And we are also ready to join hand for any activity if companies are, petroleum companies are, wish to do some activity for offset emissions. So those activities CMI is happy to support end to end. And if multiple workshop and activity, if you're planning, we are able to assist you in this regard. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite the next speaker. And I think Arun, please join us. And if you have any questions, you can ask Arun and Samrat. So they are industry expert, they can help you to address.
Thank you very much, Rohit. And myself, Arun, and I'm heading Sustainability Consulting for EK Energy Services Limited. So now, in this session, we will be focusing on different types of emissions where industry have to focus on and understand. Because now today, in the context of net zero, it is not enough only focusing within the factory. We have to understand the emissions which are happening in their entire value chain. So that's what our focus to be in this session. We will be starting right from the basics. If you have any questions, you can stop me and then ask. And hope all are from the refining industry, right? Oil and gas industry? Or you're also from other sectors as well? All are from oil and gas sector only. Yeah. Next slide. Oh. Okay, already Rohit has shown you this slide. So let's understand from the basics. Right? I'll be going right from the basics to the advanced levels. So what is climate change? So climate change is anything, the change which is happening, which we are witnessing in our day-to-day life, okay? That may happen because of natural activity as well and because of human activities, okay? So that's what IPCC is defining climate change. And UNFCCC is giving more emphasis on human activities, okay? Because of the human interventions or human industrialization and activities, climate change is happening. So that more emphasis on human activities is given by UNFCCC. And we are, in our day-to-day life, we are also witnessing that. So this graph shows the compelling evidence for the reason for the climate change. So if you see this graph, you can see that the atmospheric CO2 levels before 1950 and after 1950, that's the point where industrialization really took up. So before that, the CO2 levels never crossed 300 ppm. There were cyclic fluctuations, but it never crossed 300 ppm. And can anyone tell what is the present level of CO2 in our atmosphere? It's more than 420. I think 427. 427 ppm, that's the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. So this is a clear evidence we are seeing that there has been a change in the composition of our atmosphere. And another major anomaly what we are seeing is the temperature rise. Okay? So pre-industrialization and post-industrialization until date, the global temperature has increased by more than 1.2 degrees. So there you are seeing CO2 concentration have risen, and now here there is a clear increase in the global surface temperature. Can anyone tell what is the Earth's average surface temperature? How much? Any other guess? Everybody talks about 1.5 degree, 2 degree, 4 degree. What are they talking with reference to? So pre-industrialization, our global surface temperature used to be 13.9 degrees Celsius. Now it is around 15.2, 15.3 degrees Celsius. So that is where how the temperature has really increased. And what happens when temperature increases? It affects our climate, our weather patterns, and that's the impact we are seeing. And this particular graph shows how the CO2 emissions have really risen because of extensive use of fossil fuels. You can see from 1850, now we are in the level of more than 42 billion tons. And much of the CO2 increase is happening because of the use of fossil fuels alone. And because of land use change, we are not facing much issue. But because of the fossil fuel use, there has been an extensive increase. And this is a plot which is showing the annual CO2 emissions by world. So it is clear now China has become industrialized, and then you can see China is the largest contributor of the greenhouse gas emission in the world, the CO2 emission in the world. And next comes US, India, and EU. So this particular graph shows India is also emitting, but we have a dual problem. We have to also grow economically, and then we are bound to have more emissions, but still we also need to reach a point and then further cut down our emissions. So that is the reason India has taken a target of becoming net zero by 2070. So we all have to understand a basic concept of why this global warming is happening and why climate is getting impacted. Okay. So the basic fundamental concept to understand is the greenhouse effect. Have you ever witnessed this greenhouse effect in your own lives? I think all are having cars here. Okay. So when you travel, when you keep your car in a hot sun, okay, and keep the windows closed, and then once you enter the car, you will feel a temperature which is very hot, unbearable temperature. Why it is happening? Why it is happening? It is because the windows are actually trapping the heat. It is not allowing the heat to escape, right? So similar effect is happening in our Earth. Earth is having a very thin atmosphere, which is vulnerable, okay? So where from energy is coming to Earth? Energy is coming to Earth from sun, okay? So once this energy reaches the Earth, energy is the form of radiation, okay? It reaches the Earth, Earth reflects some amount of energy back, right? Some amount of energy is absorbed by Earth, okay? And it is re-radiated in the form of, in the infrared wavelength, okay? And the gases present, some of the gases which are present in the atmosphere absorb this heat and re-radiate it, okay? And that's how heat is getting trapped inside the Earth, okay? Is it an essential phenomena? Is it a good phenomena or a bad phenomena? Is greenhouse effect good or bad? Is it good or bad? Without greenhouse effect, we would not have been in this Earth at all. Life would not have existed also. It is a very much essential phenomena. Okay. Otherwise, Earth will become minus 40 degree in the night. Will not be able to survive. So heat should be trapped for life to exist in the world. So it is a natural greenhouse effect is very much essential. But what is happening now, because of our extensive usage of fossil fuels, we are emitting CO2, we are altering the composition of the atmosphere, and Earth has started trapping more heat. That is human-induced because of the anthropogenic activities. So this is human-enhanced greenhouse effect. So that is the real problem. So this analogy we also saw, in colder countries, people grow plants, they do farming inside a glass facility, which is called as a greenhouse, and then it provides the warmth required for growing plants. So which are the gases which is causing the effect? We always say CO2, CO2. Okay? Even water vapor is a greenhouse gas. But we are not having any control on water vapor. But the CO2 emissions we have. Because of our activities, we are emitting CO2. Okay? Ozone is again a natural greenhouse gas. Okay? But when you consider gases like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, these are all basically emitted because of industrial activities, burning of fossil fuels, agricultural activities, waste-related activities. So that is actually enhancing the greenhouse effect. So key thing to understand from the company point of view or corporate point of view, these are the 7 greenhouse gases which every company has to monitor and report. Okay, it is not, we always say the word carbon dioxide, okay, but there are other gases also which is responsible for global warming, like methane, N2O, HFCs, PFCs, SF6, NF3. These are all other gases which we are emitting because of various activities, and that's causing the global warming. So out of these 7 gases, so the global standard also says every company has to account how much of these gases we are emitting, and we have to report it. So out of these 7 gases, which causes the highest amount of global warming? Which causes the highest quantum of global warming? Any other answer? Yes. CO2. CO2 is the highest contributor because by quantity it is more. While on the other hand, maybe NF3 may have the highest global warming potential, okay, maybe in thousands. But NF3 is emitted in very minute quantities. But still it has to be accounted because it has a tremendous amount of global warming potential. So these 7 gases one has to remember because this is what we have to account and report for. So from the oil and gas sector, next to CO2, which is the other gas which we are emitting more? Methane, right? Especially plants which are handling gas exploration and then natural gas processing units. So those type of facilities will emit more methane, and that is reported in your scope 1 emissions. And similarly, several other gases also. So this particular graph table we already saw. So with respect to carbon dioxide, how much the other gases are having global warming potential. So you can see here methane traps 28 times more heat than carbon dioxide. But all these gases are reported in one unit only. That is, we call as CO2 equivalent. That's the reason we sometimes use the word carbon footprinting, okay, because we report all the greenhouse gases emissions in terms of CO2 equivalent. And these are the various contributors, like CO2. Majority of the CO2 we are emitting because of our burning of fossil fuels. Some amount of CO2 is getting emitted from industrial process directly. Like for example, in cement manufacturing, because of the process of calcination, CO2 is getting emitted directly from the process. CO2 sometimes gets emitted because of deforestation activities. Methane is getting emitted from agricultural activities, especially like rice farming, paddy farming, use a lot of water, and because of the methanogenesis, methane is getting emitted. And N2O is also getting emitted from agriculture because we are using nitrogen-based fertilizers. And methane again gets emitted from waste management activities. Okay, when any type of organic waste decomposes, methane is getting emitted, like from landfills. And there are other fluorinated gases. We saw HFCs, PFCs. These are industry-specific gases. Perfluorocarbons, from where it is getting emitted? From which type of industry? Which type of industry emits perfluorocarbons? Can you be louder? One good example is aluminum industry. Because during their electrolysis process, they use fluorinated compounds, and then there is a carbon anode, so it gets consumed and perfluorocarbons are getting emitted. So likewise, can anybody tell NF3 where it is getting emitted? NF3 from magnesium production, NF3 is getting emitted. And likewise, we have the HFCs, from where HFCs are getting emitted. We are actually emitting HFCs now. Yeah, all the air conditioning units, okay, chiller plants, wherever refrigerants are being used, we are using HFCs. So what happens over a period of time, these HFCs are getting leaked out. We lose the atmosphere, and then we replace it. So that's how we emit HFCs. So likewise, there are different sources for the reasons for emission of these type of, and SF6 is getting emitted from electrical transmission, circuit breakers, all these equipment has SF6. So over a period of time, we lose that in the atmosphere. So this is the problem actually. So we are emitting through various of our activities, like from agriculture, industry, transportation, we are emitting. And naturally, the carbon dioxide is getting absorbed also. We call it as carbon sinks. So which is the highest carbon sink? What captures? Everybody will tell that trees are capturing carbon, right? Of course, land is a major carbon sink. Even soil is a carbon sink. Rocks are also carbon sink. Rocks in the process of weathering, they capture carbon. And that is one of the highest source of carbon sink. Similarly, ocean is one of the largest ocean and marine ecosystems. They act as a huge carbon sink. We have sinks, but what the problem is, around 59% of the CO2 which were emitted is remaining in the atmosphere. And that's the reason why the CO2 concentrations are increasing. So we cannot continue to do this as long as we can. We have to reach a peak point, and then we have to cut down. Then only the concentrations of CO2 will come down. So that point is called as a drawdown point. And the globe is awaiting on which day we will achieve this point. Of course, these are the various impacts we are seeing because of climate change. You are hearing daily hurricanes are becoming stronger. We are having wildfires, forest fires happening. We are facing heat waves, unpredictable precipitation patterns. These are all the impacts of climate change. So these are all the basic understanding anyone should have before going into the subject. So that's the reason we covered these aspects. Now here we are going to make you understand what are the different types of emissions, what is the standard a company has to use for reporting, calculating and reporting their emissions. So we call it as corporate GHG accounting, corporate greenhouse gas accounting. I believe most of the companies over here are reporting their emissions, okay? But you are not aware to what level you are reporting your emissions. When we say net zero, is it enough that we are cutting our emissions only from our operations? Is it enough? No. We have to look at your entire value chain. We'll show you some interesting numbers, how these numbers look like for an oil and gas company. So to begin with, so this is the standard any company uses to calculate and report these emissions, their emissions. GHG protocol is a standard. Okay. Is one of the oldest and most widely used standard for corporates to account and report their emissions. There is one more standard. Can anybody tell that? GHG protocol, I hope all of you have heard about it. And everybody must be knowing about scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. So GHG protocols gives that framework. There is a concurrent standard. Many companies use that standard also. ISO 14064-1. That's again a concurrent standard which draws heavily from GHG protocol. And then many companies, because people like ISO, so they use ISO 14064-1 for reporting. So we can use any framework. So as per the framework, as per the standard, a corporate has to account and report their direct and indirect emissions. So here you can see they have given the examples of direct emissions. What are direct emissions? Direct emissions are something which is coming of our own assets, okay? Like the fuel which we are burning, or from the assets which we have full control over. Okay? All the fuels which you are burning, all the emissions which are coming out from your processes, okay? So these are all the direct emissions. The fuel which you are burning in your vehicles, okay? In not personal vehicles, in company-owned vehicles. So these are all classified as a direct emission, which we call it a scope of 1 emission as per JG protocol. Okay. Then the other emissions are indirect emissions. Okay. Indirect emissions are further classified into 2 categories. Okay. One is scope 2 emissions and the other one is a scope 3 emissions. So what is scope 2 emissions? It is mainly coming from the electricity which we use. It is mainly coming from the electricity which we use. But why is it is indirect emission? Yeah, because we are procuring it. So understanding the word procurement is very important. It is purchased energy. If it is not purchased energy, if you are generating your own energy, it will not come under scope 2. Okay. So purchased energy in the form of electricity or heat or steam or compressed air or cooling, okay, any form of purchased energy will be classified under scope 2 emissions. So in India, we don't purchase steam, we don't purchase heat, we don't purchase cooling and all. In India, we purchase only electricity. So it's very simple for us. We see how much of electricity we are consuming and then we convert into CO2 use of CO2 factor and then show the CO2 emissions under scope 2. And then what about scope 3 emissions? Scope 3 emissions are all other indirect emissions, okay, are classified under scope 3 emissions. And these can also be called as a value chain emissions. And GHG protocol has a scope 3 standard also, which prescribes how a corporate has to account and report their value chain emissions. So here in this slide, you can see the entire value chain, right? Whatever materials we are procuring, either it is a recurring material, whatever materials or services we are buying, there is an emission coming along with that because it is made somewhere else, okay? And, excuse me, the slides are automatically moving. Okay, so here the entire value chain is classified as, value chain emissions are classified as scope 3 emissions. Okay. And it is very much essential for us to build a GHG inventory because then only we will know how much we are emitting. We can continuously track, we can identify hotspots and then take actions. So it is very much essential for us to calculate and report our emissions. So already we saw what are scope 1 emissions, and this is with respect to an oil and gas industry. Okay. So we may be using a lot of fuel for running our engines, turbines, heaters for heating requirements. There will be methane emissions happening from venting, from storage tanks, blowdowns, and then these are called as fugitive emissions from valves, leakages, okay. And then like you have processes like gas sweetening, there will be a CO2 emissions, we are removing CO2 there. And mobile combustion is of course you have various types of equipments, mobile equipments you are having for exploration and all, and those will have some fuel combustion. So these are some examples of direct emissions for an oil and gas sector company. And basic data sources for these emissions is you have to have a record, okay? You have to have record how much gas we have entered, how much we have lost, how much leakage has happened. So we have to have a record of all these things so we can calculate and report. And scope 2 emissions is mainly the electricity which you purchase. It is not the electricity which you generate and use, it is the electricity which you purchase. If you are generating your own electricity, then it will come under scope 1 emissions. And of course, you will get the data for calculating scope 2 emissions from your electricity bills or online meters, and using which you can calculate scope 2 emissions. So till now it is very easy to do. So most of the companies are doing. But when it comes to scope 3 emissions, that is where the challenge starts. Very difficult to calculate because we don't have a control, we don't have data, and that's how we don't report also. But now, when we say net zero, we have to include our scope 3 emissions also. We'll also see in our next session the definition of net zero and why we have to include scope 3 emissions. So these scope 3 emissions are basically the value chain emissions. And from the oil and gas sector perspective, which stage of your value chain will have the highest emissions? Which stage of your value chain will have the highest emission? Sir? Transportation, yes, of course it contributes a lot of emissions, but highest sources, when your fuels are actually, the fuel which you are selling, when they are burnt, okay, when the products are being used, that will have the highest amount of emission. So what can you do about it? Yeah, you may start, you have to, ultimately if we have to reach a state of net zero, we have to move away from fossil fuels, we have to move towards other forms of energy, like we are talking about hydrogen or we are talking about biofuels. Slowly we have to include those things as part of our product portfolio and move away from fossil fuels. If at all it is not possible, okay, for some cases if we have to use a fossil fuel, then we have to go to the use of technologies like CDR. Right? Okay. So we have to definitely capture the CO2 which we are emitting and then permanently store, lock it. Okay. Any question from you? Yeah, it is possible. How much product you are selling in the market into its emission factor? It's the easiest to do. So these are the categories of scope 3 emissions. Purchased goods and services. What are the purchased goods and services for you? Like suppose if you are not making your own, if you are not extracting, okay, so you have to get the gas from some other exploration company. So that will be a purchased good for you. And there may be several equipment, machinery, capital goods which we will be procuring. So those all will have some embedded emissions. For making those goods, some amount of emissions would have happened. We call it as embedded emissions. So that also we need to report. Then fuel and energy related emissions. Will you have fuel and energy related activities? Because you are a primary industry, you may not have, okay? Okay. Yes, for making hydrogen, energy is required, so that has to be accounted. Whatever material you procure, if it has an embedded CO2, that has to be reported. And there will be a transportation related emission. Of course, all the materials are coming to your place through various modes of transport. Okay, it can be by shipment, by truck or by rail. That has to be calculated and reported. Waste which you are generating from your operations. There are different types of hazardous, non-hazardous waste which you are generating. And those waste will have to go somewhere else for treatment. Okay. It will be recovered, reused or landfilled or incinerated. So based upon the waste treatment, it will have its own greenhouse gas emissions. So that has to be reported. Business travel, we are all traveling through various ways and means. So those data has to be captured and emissions to be calculated and reported. Employee commute is daily office commute by employees. That also has to be reported. Upstream leased assets, if you have taken some assets on lease, so what are the emissions coming from those assets? That has to be reported. Processing of sold products means if you are selling some product, okay, and that's not the final consumer, okay, that's again a business which is acquiring your product and making some other product. So while they make use of your product in their process, they consume some energy and there is an emission. So that has to be reported. Use of sold product is basically the fuel which you sell in the market, it is ultimately burnt, and then you have to calculate and report those emissions. Downstream lease assets are reported if you have leased out any assets to some other party, that has to be reported. And franchisees, many organizations have franchisee model of operations. The emissions from all the franchisee locations would be reported. And then finally, investments. So investments may not be applicable for you. Investments are applicable for financial institutions. Like now, banks are reporting their emissions for their financial assets. Okay. And that's going to have a huge impact. Suppose banks are lending to different sectors. Like they are lending to coal industry, they are lending to petroleum sector, they are lending to steel sector, they are lending to small companies. Okay. Now, banks, what they are calculating, the amount of exposure they have, the amount of exposure they have into a particular sector, how carbon intensive is that exposure? And they are decarbonizing their portfolio altogether. They will not be anymore lending to carbon intensive sectors until unless you are implementing some low carbon technology that's actually helping the sector to reduce its emissions. So you have to go in that direction even for funding now. Investors are ready to invest only in low carbon technologies, no more carbon intensive technologies. So investment management companies will also report their portfolio related emissions. So this is going to bring a huge impact in the market. So this particular slide shows about your various life cycle stages of a particular petroleum company, a typical petroleum company. Like there will be a purchased raw materials and services, purchased distribution, extraction and production, refining, waste from operations, external distribution purchased by the company, product use and product disposal. So these are the different emission sources. And you can clearly see for different types of companies, for an integrated oil and gas company or for an exploration and production company or refining company. So what are the different emission sources that are categorized as scope 3 emissions? So these are the categories which one has to report. And the green ones are upstream emissions and the orange ones are downstream emissions. So this is the typical illustration of scope 3 upstream and downstream emissions for a refinery. So this is a refining unit and you have purchased distribution, you have exploration and production, and then a lot of materials you are purchasing, then you are generating waste. So you can clearly see orange lines are downstream, green lines are upstream scope 3 emissions, and refinery is the reporting boundary. And of course, IPIECA, I believe you know this organization, International Petroleum Industry Environment Conservation Association. So this has defined which are the categories of scope 3 emissions which are minor in nature and which are the categories of scope 3 emissions which are major in nature. Okay. So what are the major scope 3 emissions? Distribution, raw materials, waste from operations, and then product use and product disposal. So these are the major scope 3 emissions one company has to report. Many companies comfortably report minor emissions but not the major ones. So this slide shows the GHG profile for all the oil and gas company in India. Okay. So you can clearly see the scope 3 numbers. Okay. If the numbers, the inference here is 95% of your emissions is your scope 3 emissions only. Okay. 95% of your emissions is scope 3 emissions. So this is a picture which shows that. While scope 1 and scope 2 emissions are very minor. In case if your findings, there is some less amount, it means they have not reported certain categories. Okay, so this is a brief illustration of how the emissions look like for oil and gas sector, and then what are the different categories, how to report them. in our next session, next module, we'll look for what are the various ways and methods companies are moving towards decarbonizing their value chain emissions and how they have strategized themselves for net zero. That we'll see in the next session. Now, I'll request Mr. Samrat to cover the carbon market session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Samrat Sengupta this side. I work with EKI, and my primary work relates to climate change and carbon policy and strategy. I'm into carbon for almost last 2 decades. In my previous speaker, my colleagues has described you what is anthropogenic or human-induced climate change, why we are discussing it, what is the global warming or greenhouse gas effect impact. Ideally, it is that's why we are here in this planet. That's why the planet is livable. But what we have done with that anthropogenic part, the human-induced part, which is creating the problem. And the graph they have earlier shown that there's a plot of few or more than 1,000 years plot graph they have shown. Only the gradient of change, there are in the paleoclimatic history, there are several changes in the global mean temperature has occurred, but never it has exceed the carbon dioxide ppm level into the atmosphere is more than 300, or the gradient of change never been so steep what we have seen from last almost 100 years post industrialization happens in northern hemisphere. Now you also, Arun has described you the process where you understand how you going to know at what level of emission you are as on date. The emission accounting, the footprint accounting. Now also you understand that we have to reduce our emission, decarbonize ourselves, so that we can achieve this scientific target which IPCC has brought in around 7 years ago into the multilateral fora. That's the net zero concept. It has now used so rapidly everywhere and anywhere. It is the concept of what Arun has showed, that there is a substantial carbon sink we have, global natural carbon sink. Approximately it varies between 20 to 24 gigaton a year. But our emission has exceeded around 45 to 48 gigaton or more than that. Even present day it will be more than 50 gigaton a year. So whatever emissions of greenhouse gases we are doing and whatever the natural sinks, there is always a delta that is remaining into the atmosphere. That's create that incremental part of the ppm of carbon dioxide into atmosphere, which is creating the extra heat trapping and rising our average sea surface temperature in this world. Now the net zero concept is to reduce our emission to a level where it will match the earth natural sink, or if we can develop some projects with technology, either through use of bioscience or through other kind of technologies like CCS, which Arun was also been referred, carbon capture and storage, where we can make the sink and the emission equal, so the net increment on the atmosphere becomes zero, so that is net zero. And the global target has been given by on the that scientific target has been set that we have to achieve this by 2050, because all these greenhouse gases has substantial atmospheric life. Carbon dioxide, if once emitted, it stays into the atmosphere is more than 100 years. So, if we cannot achieve this 2050 net zero target, we will be not able to arrest the increment of temperature or average temperature of this earth within 2 degrees centigrade limit. Reference is pre-industrial era, that 13.5 degree, which was the average temperature, and that will create a catastrophic impact which will be beyond any technology we are having to protect ourselves. So, this is a pure scientific number given, that if we cannot achieve this 2050 global net zero, we will be in a soup by end of the century. Means the human race will be in a soup. So, in the process of how you going to achieve, like here I think everyone is from oil and gas sector or allied sector. So, it is not blaming you. Due to this industrialization process, we are hosted by a technological development for last 150 years, which primarily depends on concentrated form of energy, either coal or petroleum. And even in today, we are not saying it is transformation, we are saying it is transition, because of, I have no hesitation to say, standing here, though I am from the business community, is a investment politics. We cannot just say no to the technology which has been developed for last 150 years and get into something which is completely different. We are trying a little bit modification into the technology and try to fit in renewable energy in place of coal or oil. And the issue is renewable energy is a dilute form of technology, and the bridging is possible only through electrification. So, end-use electrification becomes a norms of today's life, and everywhere, if it's called as a hydrogen, hydrogen is not an energy, it's a carrier. And what it does, that it bridges between where the fossil get used, and there is no direct process yet available technically to put renewable energy in the form of electricity there. It is bridging that technological gap. The overall system efficiency of a green hydrogen is 60%, which is very, very low compared to any energy carrier we are having in this world. But still it is green, and renewable energy, not for the full life cycle of this life cycle concept. If we go for mainly the usage concept, it is still a zero emitting. I am not taking the emission that happens due to manufacturing of this solar cell or wind blade into consideration, making it simple, because power plant construction also takes a lot of emission. So, how to achieve this decarbonization? We have various transition ways to reduce our emission footprint while not reducing our energy usage. this is one aspect. Another is efficiency, how to improve your economic output without incremental use of energy in the same level that is as on date available. And India's target of 45% reduction of GDP intensity of energy is relate to that, which is unique because India thinks that it has a huge population. Our per capita emission is 1/3 of the global average. Forget about US or China. That's 1/10 or 1/15 kind of thing. On the global average, we are 1/3. So we have to service our population with minimum basic needs of the energy supply to have a basic standard of living. So we have that challenge. We have a challenge of we are in the growth path. So how to divert our growth out of the pathway that has been shown by the North in last 150 years towards a more sustainable way of growth. Because why this problem, I'm not going through the slides. The slides are available to you, will be available to you. You can go through it. I'm just giving what I understand on that. That will be for lively, I think. So, on the whole problem, it is we are talking about carbon or environment happens in this world because we have not able to put a cost indicator against the ecosystem services we have got. What is the price of coal? The price of extraction plus the Coal India profit plus. No. It's not related to slide change or nothing. So issues related to, the price of any product, or particularly I'm referring to coal. What is the cost of coal in the market? The cost of extraction, cost of transportation, refining, usage. That's the cost of coal. But the coal is produced under the earth crust for 1 million of years through a geo-eco process. Have we put a price tag to it? And we have used it in couple of years. Or the moment you get it, it gets used. So the lack of, we are not valuing the ecosystem services there in our financial or in our economic system. We have not able to get into efficiency parameters to use that component which we get free of cost from the ecosystem services, and we have exploited it. And today every problem relates to local environment, global environment, pollution. Today the Delhi pollution, everything is happening due to that. So ideally it should have a transformational approach, but yes, we are into a system, we cannot always abuse the system, we have to slowly mold it to a better world. Now, when we are going for decarbonization, there are two major ways. One is reducing your carbon or environmental footprint, including carbon footprint, by taking on technological development, process efficiency, what all Arun has described to you, to achieve a organizational level net zero. Second, you cannot do that absolute zero, because there will be, even if you are sitting there, you have a footprint there. So what is the residual emission which cannot be averted to run a business? You have to offset it. And this offset, there are two, means offset is a general word being used. There are two type of offsetting, insetting and offsetting. Insetting, suppose you are an oil and gas company, you have a refining facility, it has a X footprint, and through your internal process improvement, all the things you have made it to X minus delta X. But still there are substantial emission there. How you will achieve that zero then? Then you have to invest either within your company boundary or external to your company boundary into processes, into technologies which either remove, ideally it should remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere or carbon dioxide equivalent GHG from the atmosphere, or it will avoid emissions that has ideally been happening at the baseline level. So that creates a emission reduction as a commodity, and the market being, the carbon market comes into play. And today the whole this training session has been organized by Carbon Market Association of India. So market is now the buzzword, that it becomes a commodity. Emission reduction is becoming a commodity, and there should be sufficient trading of that commodity, which will help you to achieve a net zero. Suppose you are an oil and gas company, you put your money or investment to carbon capture and storage technology, and within your premises to address, catch the emission which you are doing and put it storage, geological reservoir, or if you have your own exploration site, so it can be used for enhanced oil production. There are a lot of technologies being available, but in India we are mostly talking about carbon capture and utilization, not storage. Utilization is not the so-called solutions for us. Storage is the solution. Utilization doesn't keep the carbon out of the atmosphere, out of the gaseous atmosphere for long. But we have to at least keep the carbon in our removal efforts for more than 300 years or ideally 1000 years to make it impactful for temperature rise. So now I will be coming to some part of my slides. Oh, sorry. No. हो रहा है ना? This all things has been discussed earlier, so I am skipping it. I will concentrate for a couple of minutes on this slide to give you the history, where from this carbon market concept first came in. In US in 1970s, 60s and 70s, there was a huge pollution, local pollution, not carbon, which was impacting US, particularly Detroit and all those car manufacturing, the industrial belts, and the sulfur dioxide was the main cause of SOx emission, SOx and NOx. So it initially started with a concept in US of SOx emission trading in 1970s, where it got succeeded. This was a cap and trade system where each industry has been given a cap that you have to reduce your emission of X. If you are not able to reduce your emission of that much quantity, you will be penalized. So the people who have overachieved, they start trade of their credit to a neighboring industry. So that was the initial emission trading. It automatically jumping on why? So that was the initials of carbon, means emission trading, which post formation of United Nations Framework Convention on Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, they adopted and form a protocol which we called Kyoto Protocol, and it has been adopted in 1997, and later on the protocol has been ratified. Ratified means there is a technical terms that it should be signed off by 55% of the global emitting country, as well as absolute volume wise 55% of the total emission sources. So it came into force in 2005, and that's the beginning of international emission trading or carbon trade. In the Kyoto Protocol, it talks about that developed country who are historically the main responsible for all the pollutions, global pollution we have, they will be reducing it by 2012 at a 5.4%, taking 1990 as a baseline. So that was the beginning, and in that they have given a flexibility mechanism where non-developed, means developing nation or underdeveloped country, they can take part in a voluntary way, and the clean development mechanism was the tool that has been provided. This creates the first level of international system, protocol, all the process related methodologies, standardization that has been done under UN Clean Development Mechanism Executive Board level to support the trade between a developing country and a developed country, the emission reduction units. Then what happened in 2008, the Great Recession hit us, and US was not any time a party to this Kyoto Protocol. They were party to UNFCCC, but they do not believe in emission trade globally because their industry will going to impact it. So Europe was pushing it, and post 2008 there was a lag because their industry also says that we are getting heat. Due to this emission reduction, we are putting lot of our money into the system, and their Kyoto Protocol almost diffused around 2013-14. The credit price in CDM was touching around $25-30 a tonnage of carbon, which diffused down to few cents. Then as an alternative, the Paris Agreement came into force in 2015, or Paris Agreement being, it's a where there is nobody to give you a target. Every country has to do its own assessment, take its own target, which is nationally determined contribution target, which India has, that Panchamrit, they have taken up. Similarly, every country has taken up. So we are in an era of Paris Agreement, which says that so we are in an era of Paris Agreement, which says that every country need to do their own, sorry, So during the process when Kyoto was not working and the climate science was established, it is almost certain the human induced climate change was happening. The voluntary climate actions among the corporate has taken up, and the voluntary carbon standard, you can see in 2007 the US started operation, and there are a lot of the VCS, the GS, the various carbon standard, they start into operation and they gain quite a momentum. Till today, voluntary market is one of the important market in carbon transaction. Though by volume of money, it is one of the smallest one, but this is the means now the space of the slides is along with me, so thanks, I don't have to do anything. So this is the history of voluntary market picking up, and this has been done by MSCI, Trove Research, they are one of the very big. So their data now showing that the VCM trajectory is improving, and there are various market studies which shows that future voluntary carbon market by 2030 will be in the range of 30 billion to somebody is saying 120 billion market. These are the various voluntary carbon registries, and also Article 6 carbon registries has been shown into. I am not going in details on the Article 6 as Rohit has already described it. I think you have a fair idea now. This this is the carbon project cycle for any of the registry in any market. It generally flows through the same process. Sorry. I should not follow the slides. You can refer it. So generally for a carbon credit as a commodity to develop, any project developer or investor, there is a set of process how you should document. It's like your project develop. If you have an idea, business idea of a new projects, how you go for a financial closure, this process is almost on the same line. You develop the documentation, like in normal case you develop a DPR, detailed project report with all techno-commercials data. Here it is called, we called it just a change of terminology, PDD, project design document. But here the data will be primarily not on technology, and commerce is a part of it, but mostly on its emission impact. So that design document goes through a process of various third-party review, and then it's submitted to a particular registry where you want to register your projects. If you want to register in voluntary carbon registry, you have voluntary Verra, you have Gold Standard. These are the one of the two oldest registries, but there are technology specific registry now into action like PureEarth, where mostly removal technologies particularly related to BECCS, bioengineering CCS get addressed, like biochar project or blue carbon. Blue carbon means if you are going for a mangrove plantation in a coastal area which relates to lot of co-benefits associated with that other than carbon. So there are various segments of registry, I am not going into that. So through the process of registration, and this document will also give you, means the consultant who developed it proper monitoring and verification system has to be put into place, which will be monitored, commodify, and then issued, and that can be then commercialized at the global carbon market. So in India, we have now developing our own regulatory carbon market, that is CCTS. You have heard lot of things about it in the newspaper also, and Rohit has also mentioned, which is a cap and trade system where government will give you, most of you are from oil and gas sector, you know PAT, performance, achieve and trade. So it's a cut, copy, paste of the PAT, just making the indicator into a carbon. So energy efficiency has been converted into carbon, and the whole system will be running like a PAT. So I don't have to explain more. So it will be a cap and trade system. Beyond that, if you suppose you are company X, you have a PAT target Y, you have achieved Y, now you have overachieved it, which overachieved by any particular project or as a organizational level. You have options, either you sell it into that PAT market or the CCTS market, where some underachiever will purchase from you to avoid the penalty, or you can sell it if the technologies fits into the Government of India 14 technology list as on date, which will be valid for next 3 years, for Article 6 bilateral market and Article 6 multilateral market, 6.2 and 6.4. 6.2 bilateral, like Rohit was mentioning, that India will be signing with Japan, South Korea, and there are 10 others who are interested to sign up. So they will be taking those credits, and it will be our NDC adjusted, corresponding adjustment. Suppose you are selling 5 unit to Japan, 5 will be deducted from our NDC achievement, will add on to Japan's NDC achievement. So that credit valuation is comparatively very, very high than the voluntary carbon market. So if you are doing anything on that 14 technology, that's why Government of India declared that 14 technology list, which are very high-end technology, which has a very substantial capital investment is required, and they are novel, yet to establish it business-wise viable, like green hydrogen, CCU is there, storage, battery storage, or any kind of energy storage is there. There are 14 technology lists are there. So you have one option of local regulatory market, another option of international compliance market. If nothing fits in, you have a voluntary carbon market, where anything which is not fit into that 14 technology list, you can sell off to any of the international investors who are interested to purchase this. And where from this purchase interest coming from? You have, Arun has described you how it is linked to the investment decision by major financer. It will help any organization to have a high score on ESG, and that gives you access of very good amount of green investment nowadays, where any investment risk assessment in environmental, social parameters, this carbon and other environmental, beyond carbon, other environmental parameters are getting high importance in risk assessment of those investments. So you get a cheaper fund if you have a high ESG score. So that's where the basic of business fraternity wants to procure carbon or reduce their own footprint. It is not a so-called voluntary or social or some kind of a that kind of a action. It has a linkage, direct or indirect, with your bottom line. I am not going into that detailed list of discussion. Sorry, let's again stop. So primarily I like to highlight this market component and the basic philosophy under this market operation. My presentation is with you. My contracts are with us. If you have specific technology related, any project related queries, you are always welcome to reach us, and we will be helping you in whatsoever we can do so. Thank you.
So I hope everyone is awake. Now we'll have our last module for the day, which will be again presented by Mr. Arun Victor Paul Raj. So I invite Arun sir. I think all of you can applaud. Yeah. This will help you to be awake also.
Thank you, Shruti. So far we have been seeing about carbon markets, and we saw what is the carbon footprint. Now this session will be focusing on net zero. Okay. What oil and gas industry is doing for achieving net zero. First, we will understand from the basic, like we saw in the previous module. We'll understand the basic concepts of net zero and what a typical corporate climate action plan will be. And then we will see what oil and gas sector companies are doing. We'll be sharing with you a few case studies. Okay, I have to tell you. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay. So this is how, this is what we suggest any type of company, you be in any sector, it is sector agnostic roadmap. This is a pathway, a journey we suggest for any type of a company. First of all, a corporate has to look at themselves, a company has to look at themselves, whether in their business strategy, climate change, whether they have taken as a factor, okay? Whether they have identified the risks and opportunities of addressing climate change. That is the first thing. And then, do they have the right type of policy level commitments? Do they have a proper governance framework within the company at all levels, at management level, at board level? And then, are we measuring our emissions? That's called as GHG inventory. And then we are measuring our and reporting. Then after doing that, we have to do a risk assessment. What are the risks we are exposed to? Okay, market risk, legal risk. Okay, and then what are the opportunities we are getting by addressing climate change? That we have to make. And then further to that, we have to take a long-term goals and short-term goals, short-term and long-term goals. A good short-term goal would be to achieving carbon neutral. Okay. Many people are using the word carbon neutral, net zero as same. Both are not same. Carbon neutral is a claim for a period. Okay. Net zero is a long-term status. So that's a very key thing to understand. Carbon neutrality can be achieved by a company at any time. Net zero is something which a company can achieve in long term. It cannot be achieved in near term. So that, and then once we have such goals in place, we need to have a carbon pricing also. The company needs to understand what is the cost it has to pay for the carbon. It can be sometimes called as internal carbon pricing. Or sometimes market will tell you the carbon price. For example, in Europe, you have the European Emission Trading Scheme. That emission trading scheme tells what is the price for carbon companies has to pay. India doesn't have any carbon price. Do we have a carbon price? Directly or indirectly? We have tax. Coal tax is there. So that's an indirect form of carbon price. So, in coming years, India will have a carbon price, okay. Now, there are schemes existing like Perform, Achieve and Trade scheme, which focuses on energy efficiency. We have the Renewable Energy scheme, certificate scheme. So, these two schemes will get merged into a domestic carbon market. This market will, over a period of time, find out a price for carbon. So, be sure that every company is going to pay a cost for carbon if you are emitting. And then further to that, it is very important if we have to reduce our value chain emissions, supplier engagement is very important. Okay. So if you don't have a supplier base, that's a different story. But if you have a supply chain and then you have to engage with them if you have to reduce your, not only supply side, even on the customer side, downstream side as well. Then, okay, now we have done this, we should have a strong action plan. Implementation of the plan is also very critical. If you're not implementing what we have planned, then we are not going to reach net zero. So if we are doing all these things, then finally go and tell the outside world that we are doing good. Okay, that's where the disclosure plays. Okay. Like a sustainability report, you tell your journey, like what are your accomplishments. And you can also participate in rating programs like CDP. CDP is a platform where companies report on their climate performance and they get a rating. And similarly, there are various other global pledges like RE100 is something where companies commit to use 100% renewable energy. Science-based target initiative is a gold standard for net zero. You might be seeing that many leading corporates across the globe have joined this initiative. It's not easy initiative. The initiative asks for any company to reach a state of net zero by 2050. And by 2030, you have to at least cut your emissions by half. So that's one of the gold standard. Now many companies have joined that initiative. So you can also join and then demonstrate your leadership. So this is a complete climate roadmap for any corporate. So you understand from this road where you are, where you have to improve, and then you move forward to achieve things. This is the key difference between carbon neutrality and net zero. These two terms are interchangeably used. And for what you are claiming carbon neutral, for what you are claiming net zero, that's also not clear. Many of the companies' commitment, this is not at all clear. Carbon neutrality is like that I reduce my carbon footprint and whatever remaining emissions I am unable to reduce, I am compensating it by purchasing offsets that has avoided carbon emissions somewhere else. Okay. Means you are compensating your emissions by supporting some other project. And then you are claiming carbon neutral status for a period. It is for a period. Every year you have to make this claim. Every year you have to account your emissions, you have to offset and make a claim. That's carbon neutrality. While on the other side, net zero is, several companies come and ask me, I want a net zero certification. What is net zero certification? Net zero is a status that can be achieved in long term. No company can claim net zero now. So net zero is very tough to achieve also. You have to actually cut down your carbon emissions, reach a near to zero state, and then whatever residual emissions we are unable to reduce, we are permanently removing the carbon. Okay. It's not offsetting, it's permanently removing the carbon, either through carbon capture or forestry, or you support such projects by purchasing offsets from similar projects. And net zero, it's not completely driven internal to a company. If a company wants to achieve net zero, it's not only the internal factors that will drive that. There are external factors as well. The government policy has to support that, okay? And the grid emission factor should come down. Technology should be evolving. Okay, technology should evolve and mature so that you can implement in your. Now we are talking about green hydrogen, carbon capture. These are all not. We will not be able to implement it now. Okay, these technologies have to mature over a bit of time, and then only we'll be able to take it up. So it's a long-term goal, and it's tough to achieve. And projects are generally more expensive. This is very important. So this is the graph which is showing how companies should be achieving net zero as per Science-Based Target Initiative. So by 2050, one has to achieve a near zero status, and by 2030, next 5 to 10 years, you are cutting down your emissions by 50 to 60%. And what Science-Based Target Initiative says, you take beyond value chain mitigation, means you also purchase offsets outside of your target boundary, outside of your value chain. You support projects so that emission is getting reduced or avoided somewhere else also. Also, companies should be investing in neutralization of residual emissions. Of course, any company cannot completely cut down their emissions. There will be some emissions which are unabateable. So, well before you are going to target the net zero, you have to start investing in those projects. from 2030 onwards, has company needs to invest on carbon sequestration and offset projects, capture projects, so that you will be able to achieve the state of net zero. So these are very important. Company need to have a near-term target and a long-term goal of becoming net zero when they will reach it, and then supporting projects beyond the value chain, and finally neutralizing the residual emissions. So these are the 4 key things one has to understand when it comes to net zero. Of course, this is a typical roadmap we offer to any company. Of course, we know what is our scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. We have decided our multi-year targets. It can be absolute numbers, it can be intensity-based targets. A growing company will have intensity-based targets because we have not saturated at some level. We are still growing. So our target should be based on intensity measure. Per unit of output, what is my intensity? And then analyze the policy, landscape, technology, viability, and then you have to also see how much carbon reduction potential is there, what is the investment required, what is my cost of abatement, and then implement it. And then a lot of training, education, capacity building is also required for that. And then if we have to engage with your supply chain, vendor selection, choice of business model. Nowadays, businesses are changing its model to meet the climate goals. These are the various decarbonization levers. Whatever you imagine, you have to do this if you have to reach net zero. First is, every company is now focusing on improving energy efficiency. And then companies are also trying to electrify their energy requirement rather than using fuels. Okay, they are electrifying. Okay. And then renewable energy. There are various types of renewable energy available. And storage is also very critical if you have to make use of renewable energy. Then green hydrogen, that's going to be the fuel for tomorrow. Carbon removal, mobility, electric mobility, carbon capture, carbon sequestration, plantations, and then capture and storage, important. These are the main decarbonization levers. Any initiative is going to lie within this only. And complementing strategies would be having a carbon price for within a company, turning our business model into a circular economy model, and then having
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shruti, Assistant Secretary, Carbon Markets Association of India. So I'm here to deliver the vote of thanks. So as we draw this insightful workshop to a close, I want to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude to all those who made this event a success. First and foremost, a big thank you to our esteemed speakers for the workshop, Mr. Rohit Kumar, Mr. Arun Victor Paul Raj, and Mr. Samrat Sen Gupta. Your expertise on the topic, navigating carbon markets and achieving net zero, strategies of the industry. We appreciate the time and effort you dedicated to sharing your knowledge. CMAI expresses our gratitude to the India Refining Summit team and Messe Frankfurt team for ensuring everything ran smoothly. I would also want to thank all the delegates who have attended this workshop. Your questions and interactions demonstrated a genuine interest in advancing our collective efforts towards sustainable practices. The Carbon Markets Association of India is committed to enhancing capacity building programs. Recently, we successfully organized a capacity building program for Indian Oil. And in July, we conducted a workshop with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, a workshop, National Carbon Market Certification Workshop. Further, in order to cater to a broader audience, we regularly organize virtual courses as well. Last month, on Ozone Day, we organized a Mastering Carbon Market Certification online course. Our next virtual program will be on CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which will be on November 29th. We encourage you to join us for the courses as well, for the virtual courses as well. Let us take these knowledge that we have gained today and apply it towards fostering sustainable practices and thereby leading to a greener future. Thank you. So we'll be distributing the certificates to you. Mr. Gaurav will be announcing the names. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Chairman, once again for conducting such a brilliant workshop. And it's very thoughtful of CMAI to distribute this certificate of completion to all our delegates who have actively participated in this workshop. I'm going to announce the name of the delegates one by one, and I request them to kindly come on stage to collect the certificates. Okay. I also request Mr. Arun Victor Paul Raj to kindly join me in handing over the certificates to the delegates and the attendees.